We're holding Be'ezah Hashem Mishnah base. Perek Aleph Mishnah base. That's it. That's where we're holding a very gewaldige Mishnah. It's a short Mishnah. It's not going to take too much of your time, but it's a gewaldige Mishnah as well. Hu haya oime. Hu haya oime. I'm sorry, I skipped. Shimon HaTzadik. The Heilige Shimon HaTzadik that we have been Zaycha to sing by and to eat by and to daven by many times. Heilige Shimon HaTzadik. Hoya Mishiore Knesses HaGedola. Could you imagine? He was mamish one of the leftovers of the Anshi Knesses HaGedola. In fact, if you really want to know, for those of you that want to know a little bit of history, Shimon HaTzadik was actually active during the in-between period between the Persian and the Greek rule over Eretz Yisrael. It was a very hard time, and actually has a direct idea to what we're going to mention as well, but Be'ezah Hashem as well, that is actually incredible. Just to understand a little bit of history of who we're talking about over here, Shimon HaTzadik was a contemporary of Alexander the Great, right? Alexander HaGodol, Alexander the Great. He lived at the time, and I think it's important to understand this before we mention what Shimon HaTzadik said, when there was a tremendous amount of Greek philosophy that was flourishing around the world. It was a tremendous amount of Greek philosophy, and there was science, and there was tremendous revolutionary concepts of Aristotle and all these sorts of things. And it seemed to be at the time when Shimon HaTzadik lived that Alexander the Great and the wisdom of Aristotle was invincible. It was the combination of two of them. Everyone thought this was the future of the world. This was the invincible power. 2,000 years later, the might of the Greek Empire is only in history. It doesn't exist anymore. Everything that Aristotle, everything that he stood for, and everything that the Greeks stood for, is no longer here as well. However, that which the Anshe Knesset HaGedola, what they said, is still here. And that's what's incredible of what he says, and we'll say it in a moment, when Shimon HaTzadik came along, and this was the man before whom Alexandra bowed in tremendous kavod at the gates of Yerushalayim, and it was a tremendous thing that he understood what was the foundations of the world, and as we'll read them now, and it really puts things in perspective. Shimon HaTzadik, that means he was one of the leftovers, one of the last ones of the Anshe Knesset HaGedola. Who are your oimer? Who are your oimer? Rashi always translate in Pirkei Avos means that it was rugel bepiv. It means he always used to say, this was like his saying, his catchphrase that he always said. Al shloishet dvarim ha'olam oimer. There are three things that the world stands on. Incredible. The world stands on the following three: ala Torah, v'ala avoda, v'al gemilas chasodim. These are the three things, and this is again Shimon HaTzadik talking, understanding and seeing the Greek philosophy, saying no, that's not going to stand. The only thing that this world is really standing on, that's really going to last, is Torah Kedosha. That's what it is. Avodah over here, Rashi learns, is korbanos. Why are korbanos so important? Why they're dvarim shel ha'olam ha'omed. So the Mefarshim bring down that a korban is basically a small physical connection we have with the Rabbeinu Shalom. It goes from physical to spiritual. That's what a korban is. A korban is something that is a physical animal. We take it, we put it on the Mizbeach, and then we offer it to the Rabbeinu Shalom. It becomes spiritual. It's now what we have Bisman Hazeh. We have obviously the Avodah Shabbalei, the Gemara in Tainis says it's Tefillah, and therefore Tefillah is b'makom korban. If that's the case, that means Tefillah is our gel. It's that which puts together, it's the combination, it's the joining points between the physical and the spiritual. It connects this world to the next world. It does a tremendous thing. In fact, I will tell you, there's a tremendous Rabbeinu Yonah here. Rabbeinu Yonah says that the world was created on these things, mean that this is why the Rabbeinu Shalom created the ganze world, for these three things: Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim. These are Ratzon Hashem. These are the things that the Rabbeinu Shalom created the world. Gemilas Chasodim, Rashi over here in Pirkei Avos learns, it means lending money to a oni, And he says not only to an oni, but even to an oshi, even to a rich person. That means anyone that needs something is gimilas chasodim, and as we know, olam chesed yibana, the world was created on chesed and stands on chesed and can only last on chesed, and it's tremendous chesed that we're seeing in this generation as well. It's tremendous amount of chesed. The Sfas Emes says a beautiful thing. He says the world is miskayim on Torah and sometimes on avodah. The Noam Elimelech wants to say that until the Arizal came along, it was only Torah. Says the Noam Elimelech, the Heilige Reb Melech, that we were there in Lezhensk. We were actually Zoycha to be one of the very last groups to be by Reb Melech before the whole coronavirus. He says that nowadays it used to be Torah, but now it's all Gemilas Chasodim. It's a very scary words from the Noam Elimelech, that it says that he understands the Mishnah, that yes, in other words, like the Sfas Emes says, that sometimes this, sometimes this, sometimes this. That means each generation has within it the koyach of what they need, and our generation says the Noam Elimelech is Chesed, and that's what it is. Gemilas Chasodim is something which is very, very important. What we could do, how we can try and help people, and how we can try and help our fellow man as well. I want to tell you a couple of things. First of all, like this, these are the three things that we're saying, which are Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim, are represented in the Sfarim HaKadoshim as the three essential human relationships. Number one, man with God. Number two, man with man. And number three, maybe and perhaps even more important, man to himself. And that's what he's telling us. He's telling us like this, that the Avodah is what binds us to the Rebbeinu Shel Olam. Chesed is what binds us to other people. But Torah enables a person to relate to himself. And he says, the Sfarim HaSida, Uli bring this down, that it's unfortunate sometimes that people become almost alien to themselves. Right, you deny who you are. I spoke about this recently to someone, and I said, this quarantine is an incredible opportunity that we have to discover who we are. I think it's Rabbi, who is it? I think it's Rabbi Twersky. Rabbi Twersky is Dr. Rabbi Twersky, an unbelievable yid. He has like 60 books. Incredible, 60 books. Maybe it's even more. He has on relationships, and he has on this, and he has an incredible amount of books. He's an incredible human being. They once asked him, how did you write so many books? These are incredible books. These are not like books stam. These are books about human psychology. And he said, actually, they're all one book in 60 different ways of saying it. It's all about self-esteem. He said he realized it himself once, that even though he was a doctor, he said this about himself, that he realized that he wasn't comfortable with who he was when they once sent him on a type of they sent him to one of these things where you you have to go to these bars and you by yourself, and you I guess it's that type of exploitatus. And he said he discovered at that point that he didn't and he wasn't comfortable with who he was. And he said, sometimes when we're interacting with other people, it's so easy for us to sort of forget who we are, and we just sort of blend with our surroundings. Sometimes we have to get to know ourselves, and I think this quarantine is an incredible opportunity for us to get to know who we are, and that's what Torah is. Torah gets us to know who we are, and that's what it is. In psychology, it's called denial, right? It's an unconscious mechanism which basically protects a person from the things that he doesn't want to know, and that's what Torah is. And that's why how beautiful, how one of the very first things we're saying, this is what keeps the world going, is we've got again Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim, which represents Odom to the Rebbeinu Shel Olam, Odom to someone else, and Odom to himself, which is also an incredible thing as well. Rabbi Yosef Kairoi, in the Beis Yosef, in the beginning of Choshen Mishpat, brings these words of Shimon HaTzadik, and he says that if Klal Yisrael are in Golus, so why is it so difficult? Right? He says it's so difficult for us to learn Torah. We can't serve in the Beis Hamikdash, and even how much Chesed can we do? But he says it tells us the answer. That and the question is that later on there's a Mishnah that says later on at the end of the Perek, Shimon ben Gamliel tells us that the world exists due to three things, and this is the major kash that all the Mefarshim deal with, and that is justice, truth, and peace. What's the difference? And he says that as long as we have those three things, at least that, we can try and continue civilization. And I think it's important for us to realize when we learn this Mishnah, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim, all of us on our level are able at some way to do Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim, and we should try to become that, and we should try Be'ez Hashem, to keep this as much as we can, because this is what keeps us going and keeps the world going.